Welcome back. You're watching live from Paris on France 24. The headlines this hour. An attempted coup in Gabon crushed. The government says it's killed 2 of the soldiers behind efforts to overthrow President Ali Bongo. He's been out of the country for months, recovering from a stroke. The Archbishop of Lyon on trial over allegations he helped cover up child abuse by a priest. Philippe Barbarin is the highest-ranking member of the French Catholic Church to be linked to a paedophile scandal. And the French Prime Minister says he will tighten security following an 8th weekend of Gilets jaunes unrest. 50,000 people were out on the streets of major cities at the weekend. Edouard Philippe says he wants to crack down on unofficial demonstrations and those that commit violence and vandalism. Well, we begin this hour in Gabon, where an attempted coup has been thwarted, according to the office of President Ali Bongo. 2 of the soldiers who stormed a radio station calling for a popular uprising Monday have been killed by security forces. The president, whose family has ruled Gabon for 5 decades, has been out of the country since October. He's recovering from a stroke. Both the African Union and France condemned today's attempted coup. Haxi Myers-Belkin has the latest.
A day of spontaneous, scattered protests in the Gabonese capital on Monday. Those minor clashes with security forces undermining an earlier assertion by the country's communications minister that everything was business as usual in Libreville.
Our forces are in control in Libreville. I'm able to move freely through the capital. I can assure you that nothing unusual is happening in Gabon. The government is in place, our institutions are safe, and our citizens are going about their daily lives.
Armoured vehicles could be seen across the capital following an abortive coup attempt earlier in the day.
Gabonais.
After storming the studios of Gabon's state-run radio station in the early hours, a group of army rebels took to the airwaves and social media to call for an uprising. The man issuing the statement identified himself as Lieutenant Kelly Ondo Obiang, deputy commander of the Republican Guard and spokesman for a rebel youth movement comprised of members of the armed forces. The army used tear gas to disperse the some 300 coup supporters who'd gathered outside. A curfew was imposed on the capital and access to the internet was cut off. At around 8:30 a.m, security forces entered the media HQ where the soldiers had been holed up. The government has said that the coup leader has been arrested and 2 of his accomplices killed. Condemnation of Monday morning's events came not only from the government, but also from the African Union, its president tweeting that he rejected all unconstitutional change of power.
The Archbishop of Lyon has gone on trial, accused of covering up child sex abuse. Cardinal Philippe Barbarin is the highest-ranking member of the Catholic Church in France to become linked to a paedophile scandal. It's alleged he failed to act against a priest who abused children in the 1980s and 1990s. He denies the allegations. Yenna Lee has the story.
Gathering his thoughts before the court opens its session, Philippe Barbarin, the Archbishop of Lyon, faces up to 3 years in prison and 45,000 euros in fines. Plaintiffs accuse him of covering up sexual abuse in the Catholic Church. The cardinal denied the allegations before the judge.
I never sought to hide, let alone cover up, these horrible deeds.
Barbarin and 5 others are accused of failing to report sexual assault committed by their colleague, priest Bernard Prenat, on children from 1986 to 1991. Despite multiple accusations spanning decades, Prenat worked in close contact with minors until 2015, when a former Boy Scout went public with his story. Police dropped the investigation after 6 months in 2016 for lack of evidence, but a group of victims managed to have the case reopened.
It's an important trial. It comes after almost 4 years of legal proceedings, and now we're going to learn more elements of truth on the silence of the Church, of its institutions, and more about the silence that was imposed on the victims.
Though Barbarin has not been accused of paedophilia himself, the Catholic Church's culture of cover-up is on trial. Monday, Pope Francis said the abuse of minors is one of the vilest crimes conceivable. But the Vatican's number 3, Archbishop Luis Ladaria Ferrer, who is one of the accused in this same trial, won't be flying to France this week, the Holy See citing his immunity from prosecution.
Well, to talk more about that, I'm joined now by Amicia Pellissier. She's the president of Catholic Voice France. Thank you for being with us on France 24 tonight. Now, in your opinion, does this case mark a turning point for the Catholic Church in France, in that those higher up must answer allegations of covering up abuse? Has there until now been a culture of secrecy, do you think?
I think there has never been any doubt in the Church that sex abuses are among the gravest possible crimes. I think this trial, however, as you're saying, is a very important public event, because it's not just about what Cardinal Barbarin did or didn't do. It's about putting on trial a culture of silence which has existed in the Catholic Church. And it's a culture of silence that is deeply horrifying and which hurts us Catholics and which hurts society at large, and for very good reasons, because it's a culture which runs counter to the values of truth, of protecting the weak, which are the core of our faith in Christ and should be the foundations of the Church. Now, I think what we are seeing today also is moving from a culture of silence to a culture of listening. And that's a shift which has occurred in the Church at large, not just in the Church in France, but which we are seeing now in very big proportions. And Cardinal Barbarin himself has been one of the actors of these changes, listening to the victims, trying to put their stories first before institutional interests.
Why do you think it has taken so long, though, for these high-ranking figures in the Church to admit what they have done or what they haven't done to protect young people? I mean, we're talking about crimes that happened in the 1980s and 1990s, so for them to keep silent about this all of this time is pretty shocking in itself, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. I'm with you on that. And I think it's one thing to be hurt and angry at the revelations of sex abuse cases, and it's another thing of being hurt at the silence that was deliberately kept by members of the hierarchy of the Church. Now, why that is, I think there are many different elements to answer this question, but maybe a way of seeing it in a general, and to give a general answer, is that these cases are incredibly complex. I mean, in part, the answer is that members of the Church thought that they were doing it a good service by protecting these perpetrators. They thought they were protecting the institution by keeping silence, which is obviously very wrong. Also, we should also remember that these cases, as I was saying, are very complex, and so many layers are involved: religious, spiritual, institutional, judicial.
How is it different? If a child is abused by an adult, it's child abuse. Religion and spirituality shouldn't come into it. It's a crime. And if somebody covers it up, it's a crime.
Absolutely. It is a crime. Whatever it is a crime. Completely. What I'm saying is that for members of the Church themselves to realize how important the crime was, or its consequences, has perhaps not always been so easy and transparent. And that in itself is a failing. And I suppose we now are much more aware of the possibility of these crimes happening, for one, and of the measures of prudence, the guidelines that have to be put in place to prevent these things happening. And I think there's a new awareness of that. And it's part of culture of listening and of protecting, the weaker members of the Church.
Amicia Pellissier, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, France has been paying tribute to the victims of the Charlie Hebdo attacks 4 years ago today. 2 jihadist gunmen stormed the offices of the satirical weekly, killing 11 journalists and a police officer. In the days that followed, 4 people were killed at a Jewish supermarket and a policewoman was shot dead in the street. Maria Sophos has this report.
Franck Brinceau-Larue. Cabu.
Read out during a ceremony of remembrance the names of those killed during the Charlie Hebdo attacks. France's Interior Minister Christophe Castaner and Paris Mayor Anne Hidalgo attended Monday morning's ceremony to pay homage to the 11 victims of the tragedy. The terrorist attack took place 4 years ago. Here we see Saeed and Sheriff Kouachi leaving the paper's headquarters on the 7th of January 2015, armed with assault rifles, having just committed a massacre. Amongst the victims was satirical cartoonist Georges Wolanski. His wife, who still accuses the French state of negligence over the attack, refused to attend the remembrance event.
When Charlie Hebdo was receiving credible threats, why was it not being monitored by the police from November onwards? It was always monitored, except from the end of November.
At Monday's ceremony, respects were also paid to Ahmed Merabet, a policeman killed by the Kouachi brothers as they fled. Tribute was also paid to the 4 victims killed at a kosher supermarket on the 9th of January after being taken hostage along with others. Present on Monday was a witness to this incident.
It's about remembering what happened in 2015. It was a very hard year for all of France.
17 people in total were killed at the hands of terrorists in France in January 2015.
Now, Thailand has reversed plans to deport an 18-year-old Saudi woman. Rahaf Mohammed Al Qunun had barricaded herself in an airport hotel in Bangkok, pleading asylum. Thai authorities say they will now not deport her to Saudi Arabia.
A day after the Saudi asylum seekers' legal limbo began, a breakthrough, with Thai authorities saying they will allow Rahaf Al Qunun to enter the country for evaluation by the UN Refugee Agency.
She is in trouble. If she goes back to her country, she faces danger. Now she has fled that danger, Thailand is ready to welcome her with open arms. Therefore, today I have allowed her into the country and put her in the care of the UNHCR.
Rahaf immediately took to Twitter to welcome the return of her passport and to say she felt safe under the protection of the UNHCR, despite the arrival of her allegedly abusive father in the country. The Saudi woman's ordeal began on landing at Bangkok's Suvarnabhumi airport. It was meant to be just a simple transit stop on a journey from Kuwait to Australia, for which she had a valid visa. But when Thai authorities confiscated her passport,
I had no choice. They said I have to go tomorrow.
She took to social networks to ask for help. The 18-year-old fled Kuwait during a holiday with her family. She says that back in Saudi Arabia, she's regularly beaten up by her brothers and was once locked in a room for 6 months for cutting her hair.
I'm not leaving my room until I see...
Refusing to board a flight back to the Middle East, the Saudi runaway got in touch with a series of NGOs. Human Rights Watch, for one, welcomes the latest development in her case, but isn't celebrating just yet.
We're still being quite wary. I mean, we want to make sure that she is found to be a refugee and that she is protected and able to go to a place that is safe. We're dealing with Saudi Arabia. It's a very powerful, very influential government, and we don't want to take anything for granted.
The Saudi embassy in Thailand has denied any involvement in the case. In Saudi Arabia, women can face punishment for a number of so-called moral crimes and can also be the target of honour killings.
A former professional boxer who was filmed punching police officers during the latest round of yellow vest protests here in France has handed himself in to police. French media have named him as 37-year-old Christophe Dattinger. There were clashes in several French cities this weekend with at least 50,000 yellow vest protesters out on the streets. Wassim Cornet has the story.
It was another day of what has almost become routine in the French capital. Thousands of yellow vest protesters converging in Paris, expressing anger toward the government. Scuffles broke out close to the Musée d'Orsay, and then this happened. A man dressed in all black seen attacking riot police on a bridge over the River Seine. Video shot by an independent press agency shows the man punching a policeman repeatedly. A few minutes later, he is seen kicking a policeman who was already on the ground. Over the weekend, he was identified by multiple people on social media as Christophe Dattinger, a 37-year-old former professional boxer who currently works for the maintenance department of a Paris suburb. In a 2.5-minute long video posted on Facebook, Détinger admits he was the man who attacked riot police. In it, he says he has taken part in every demonstration in Paris for the past 8 weeks. He also explains how this one ended differently.
I was tear-gassed. My wife and my friend were also tear-gassed. And at one point I became furious. And yes, I reacted badly, but I was defending myself.
At the end of the video, Détinger calls on the Yellow Vests to continue protesting peacefully. The government is taking the incident very seriously. Even before the man was identified, the Interior Minister said in a tweet that it would take the man to court.
The police prefecture has decided to press charges. I have utmost confidence in our justice system, and this man will have to face justice for this attack, which was both cowardly and intolerable.
On social media, though, Yellow Vests by the hundreds are calling Christophe Détinger a hero. A crowdfunding account set up by a family member to cover his legal fees has already raised several tens of thousands of euros. Protests by the Yellow Vest movement are expected to continue in the coming weeks.
Well, the French Prime Minister has pledged to crack down on the ongoing unrest by the Yellow Vest movement. Edouard Philippe said on national television a short while ago that he favours a new law that would penalise those who take part in unofficial protests. He also wants greater powers for those who commit violence and vandalism during the protest. Take a listen.
There were 2 Yellow Vest demonstrations last Saturday. The first one was declared and everything went smoothly. The second one was not declared and turned into the riot that we witnessed. We must maintain the freedom to demonstrate in France, but we must also sanction those who want to exploit that freedom. That is why the government would like to pass a new law, which would punish those who do not respect the obligation to declare a protest beforehand. That law would also punish those who take part in undeclared protests and those who attend protests with their faces covered.
Well, to talk more about that, I'm joined by Bruno Courtres. He's a researcher at the CNRS Institute and a professor at the Sciences Po University. Thank you for being with us tonight. First of all, your reaction. What did you make of Edouard Philippe's comments?
I think that Edouard Philippe is in a quasi-obligation to respond by security. He is the Prime Minister, he is the chief of the government, and when you see the pictures that we have seen on Saturday, the Prime Minister has to react, obviously. If he won't do so, many people in France would say, so France is now absolutely the mess. So I think that the Prime Minister first is in an obligation to respond by security. But response by security is not the only things to do. There is still the political issues, and we know that security is obviously necessary, but security is not going to respond to the roots of the crisis.
Well, we've already had armoured cars on the streets of Paris. We've had unprecedented numbers of riot police deployed, tear gas, all the rest of it. And how much further can they go down the security route?
They have to do it. They have to do it because Saturdays after Saturdays, it is growing and growing and growing. So at one stage, we need to stop that violence on any side. We have seen the violence of some of the people claiming that they are the Yellow Vests. I'm not sure that they are, but claiming they are the Yellow Vests also. But also we have seen amazing scenes and amazing pictures of police violence also. So at one stage, we need a de-escalation of that, and we need to enter into a purely political process. It can't continue like that. France is probably one of the rare European countries where you can see this kind of pictures since the recent years. It can't continue like that.
Well, what is the government strategy? We know that President Macron has launched this big national debate, which will involve communities and city mayors and all the rest of it. That is yet to get off the ground, but he's offered them, small measures, a boost in the minimum wage, that kind of thing. That didn't work. What else can he do? Is he hoping that this will just fizzle out on its own?
I think the only outcome would be a political one. Okay, it's good to have a big debate. After all, it's good to exchange and it's good to communicate. But at the end of that, we probably have somewhere a referendum or something like that. At one stage, we need a political end. The political end could be by referendum. The political end would be by policies also, or it could be by some big announcements of President Macron or the Prime Minister, but it has to be a political answer. There is two big questions. One is going to be about the institutions. One of the major claim of the Yellow Vest is about this popular initiative referendum. And the second one is going to be about the fiscal justice and particularly yes or no, should we continue to have this ESF, the
tax on the big wealth?
The tax on the very rich person.
Macron got rid of that yes. the Gilets jaunes want to bring back.
Should it be getting back? So it's
Macron's
going to be
yes,
it's going to be the two big issues of the national debate.
Does the movement still enjoy the support of the public? Because that has been the big worry for Macron so far.
Amazingly, yes. Amazingly, yes. It's amazing.
Even with all the scenes of violence in all the French cities.
It is a little bit getting down, obviously, but still on today, between 50 and 55% of the French are supporting or understanding the movement of the Yellow Vest, which is quite an extremely rare phenomenon of public opinion.
All right, Bruno Cotres, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you very much. Now, in Australia, more than 3,000 people have been stung by highly venomous jellyfish. A massive influx of Portuguese man-of-wars, whose stings are notoriously painful, have invaded the country's northeastern shores in recent days, and that has forced the closure of several beaches. The extraordinary number of stings has been blamed on strong onshore winds from the northeast, which has brought the creatures into contact with swimmers.